You may be seated. Thank you, Reverend Richardson, for that word of prayer. Wanted to mention that Shane Young is pastor of Canasta United Methodist Church, and we appreciate him for singing our national anthem. And I would like to welcome you and thank you for being a part of our Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day. I would like to thank everyone that worked very hard to make this event possible. I'd like to thank the town of Mocksville, Davie County government for their support. Many communities across North Carolina do not have the support for veterans that we enjoy. It's because we have people in leadership positions that really care for the veterans and appreciate their sacrifice. They may not understand all that you've gone through, but they understand that you fought for our freedom. And for that, they are grateful. I know that may sound like round-nosing. That's a military term. But it was amazing to see how things come together to put this event on. If you look around, even the weather cooperated, so you know somebody's living right. Somebody's doing something right. It's to honor our Vietnam veterans. The flags are flying today because we have the freedom to fly them because of your courage and determination. They're flying today to honor our Vietnam veterans, to show our gratitude for their service and sacrifice. When many of you returned home from Vietnam, there were no flags flying, no crowds to welcome you home. Some came home to an empty airport or bus station. Some of you even came home to people making comments that cut you to the heart. Many of you did not want to acknowledge your military service. I can understand that. And although we cannot change history, we can purpose in our heart that from this day forward to never again forget and neglect our veterans that gave so much to their country. Just look around. Look into the faces of your loved ones, your friends and your family that want you to know how proud they are of you and welcome you home for a job well done. As a young boy growing up in the 70s, I played Army. I had heard of the Vietnam War. I'd watch TV and see the news broadcast every night. Then one Sunday it was announced that there would be a special speaker at the evening service, a U.S. Marine, and his name was Patrick Cleburne McClary. You may know him as Cleve. He had been wounded in Vietnam, and I remember that as a 9, 10, 11-year-old little boy, I did not grasp the result of it. When he came into the sanctuary, everyone stood and cheered and clapped. In walked a Marine in dress blues. Now understand, this could have been an Army, Navy, Air Force, but in this instance it was a Marine. He had a patch over his left eye, and there was something about his dress coat that it didn't hang right. And then I saw that he didn't have a left arm. He walked down the aisle as we stood and clapped, and people were wiping tears from their eyes. I may have wiped tears from my eyes too, as I was trying to make sense of what this hero had gone through by fighting for my freedoms in a place called Vietnam. He gave his testimony that night and explained how he lost his left arm and left eye. He was a platoon leader of the 1st Recon Battalion in Vietnam. On his 19th Recon Patrol, Cleve and his unit engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the enemy. Suffering devastating injuries, which included the loss of his left arm and left eye, Cleve continued to lead his men. As I looked into his face and shook his hand, I remember that he smiled at me And I said something to the effect of thank you. That was probably all I could get out. I must have wondered as a young child how he could be smiling through those devastating injuries. Now grown up, I realize that love for one's country and living the oath of duty, which you all may remember, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the officers appointed over me, according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. That's the motivation that drives our veterans of all wars. I learned something that day as I listened to that Vietnam veteran. I respected him for having the courage and the bravery to face the enemy and to protect the freedoms on my behalf. I reflected on his sacrifice and on the ones that paid the ultimate sacrifice and did not return from Vietnam. And I listened as he talked and reminisced about the camaraderie that he and his men had shared. If we, as a nation, a community, friends and loved ones, would show these Vietnam War heroes the respect that they deserve and reflect on their courage and sacrifice and listen as they reminisce when and if they choose to do so, it would give them the encouragement and resolve to win the battles that are facing our Vietnam veterans today. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice as a veteran of Vietnam.